Well, this is number 2 in my Hep C information video blog. I'm going to try and keep this story sort of chronological. So in my last talk I talked about just an overview of how I got to where I am now. I just want to backtrack a little bit to when I found out I got Hep C, because a lot of people freak out like I did when they discover that they've got Hep C, and I mean, it used to be a big deal even only 5 years ago, even only a couple of years ago, because the treatment options were so bad, both in terms of not being very effective and also in terms of the side effects. But nowadays the treatment options are actually really good, in fact miraculously good, with in most cases very few or zero side effects and a very high cure rate. So first of all, whilst I freaked out 3 years ago when I found out that I had Hep C, if you find out you've got Hep C now, there's no need to freak out, because first of all, the drugs that are available now are relatively cheap, in fact very cheap, and they're really effective. So anyway, I'll go back to when I found out I had Hep C, because you still will freak out a little bit when you find out you've got it. So this is just for people who've just found out they've got Hep C, and I'm just going to go through how I went through that process. So I was feeling real sick. My urine was really dark, sorry about the overshare. It stunk. I was fatigued. I was having nosebleeds. If I banged my skin, I would bruise really easily. The slightest scratch, I would bleed. And I just felt like rubbish all the time. And so I went to the doctor eventually, after my wife made me do it, after she Googled what the symptoms were and sort of got an idea herself. So I went to the doctor. I tested positive for Hep C antibodies, which is the first test that everyone will get. And I got to add in here, if you test positive for antibodies, it doesn't mean you've got Hep C. About a quarter of all people who come in contact with the Hep C virus will throw the virus with their own immune system. So you get the antibody test, there's still a better than 20% chance that your own immune system will throw it off. So a lot of people contact me, they're freaking out, they've got the antibody test, and then a week later they write back, or 2 weeks later, and the viral load test, the RNA test, shows that they actually don't have Hep C. So a lot of doctors don't even realise this. They get the antibody test and they tell the patient they've got Hep C, but 1 out of 4 basically people won't have it. So when you get the antibody test, first thing to do is go and get the Hep C RNA test, and that will confirm whether you actually do have Hep C or not. So anyway, that's the first freak out. Then that's normally, for most people, that will be, yes, I have Hep C, but for about a quarter of people, the antibody test just means they've had it and they've cleared it. So anyway, I freaked out. I got the antibody test. My doctor didn't know that there was a chance I wouldn't have it, and it turned out I did have Hep C. So then I went and saw a specialist. I got the viral load test and the genotype test, and again, my doctor really didn't know much about Hep C at all. He thought almost for sure my wife would have it, probably my kids would have it. So there's this big freak out period where you think, God, have I infected my entire family? And anyway, it's actually really hard to infect anyone else in your family. Like, I've been married nearly 40 years, and I've had Hep C all that time, and I've never transmitted it to, or it turned out I didn't transmit it to my wife, and none of my kids caught it off me either. So it's really hard to transmit Hep C. It has to be blood to blood. So it's still, you get the family tested anyway, but again, it's not something you need to freak out about. The chances of you transmitting Hep C to your family are really super duper low. It's almost impossible. Anyway, so So I went through this thing, family got tested, all clear. I discovered I had genotype 2. And then you go through this thing about, okay, so I've got Hep C, and there's this weird stigma associated with having Hep C. Who do I tell? Do I tell people? And I just decided, you know, I like drinking wine. You know, I love a glass of wine every now and then. And of course, when I went to a party or to the pub and I didn't have a glass of wine, people say, hey, how come you're not drinking, Greg? And I just decided, I'll just tell people. I just said, oh, look, I've just discovered I've got Hep C and I've got to stop drinking. That's that. And, you know, everyone was cool with that. There was a bit of discussion. Some people I had to explain stuff to, but of all the people I knew, there was only one person who sort of avoided me, Hep C, and sort of treated me as if I had the plague or something. Everyone else was cool about it. So personally, I chose not to broadcast it, but if it came up in conversation, I just told people, look, I've got Hep C, don't worry, it's not contagious, I can't give it to you unless, you know, we slice our arms and put our blood together or something. And everyone was good with that. And you know, personally, it was a big relief that everyone knew the battle that I was going through. So, I mean, that also has to be a personal decision. Like, I know some countries, you know, there's more of a stigma associated with Hep C than others, and even in certain communities. So it has to be a personal decision that you make. But I found it easier just to tell everyone. So once that was done, I felt a lot better. And then, of course, you get into the treatment side of things. So I'll deal with treatment in my next video, but I hope this proves useful to anyone who's just found out that they have Hep C. It's not a death sentence. It's almost impossible to give it to anyone else. And it's actually really easy to cure nowadays, easier than most infectious diseases, in fact. Thank you.